what was one or two of the really powerful skills that you developed or perspectives you developed through your years of spending time with a psychologist?
I feel like there is honestly so many things. And one of the biggest and most important things I've learned in therapy is...
Hi, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and this is Well, Hello Anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share honest conversations, and uncover the science behind anxiety and wellbeing, all while creating a space where it's okay to not be okay. Let's continue this journey together. More than 60% of girls and young women between the ages of 12 and 24 are struggling with their mental health. And what we know also, very sadly, is that 85% of young people are also worried about the mental health of at least one friend. So not only are our girls struggling in themselves, which is really hard, and for those of us that have lived experience with anxiety or mental illness, we know what that's like. They're carrying that weight of worrying about others at such a young age. We also know that at least half of mental illness comes on by the age of 14. And yes, 14, you heard correctly, and 75% of mental illness by the age of around 24. And so we know that it hits us young, and many of us who are adults with mental illness, like me, can look back into our childhood and our teen years and see where it all began. We know how painful it can be to experience a mental health challenge, and we also know it's painful and difficult for the people who care about us or those that are caring about young people who are struggling. And so today's guest, I cannot wait to welcome her. She is just extraordinary, and she's doing incredible work in this space, and she's come up with some really brilliant solutions, but she's also very recently been appointed to a role that enables her to affect not only the work she does through her organisation that she founded, which is called Womn-Kind, but as a Deputy Commissioner of Lived Experience for the New South Wales Mental Health Commission, she's able to affect policy and more change from the inside out, which is really special. It is such a joy to welcome Ruby Riethmuller. She, as I said, she's the Deputy Commissioner Lived Experience at the New South Wales Mental Health Commission, founder of Womn-Kind also. She is a passionate advocate for youth mental health, particularly in rural and regional communities, which can really miss out. And she is leading change. She is a woman on a mission, and she is doing such great work. She has supported over 25,000 young people through her work and has helped reshape the way we think about care and how we can make it more accessible, more relatable, and actually more effective. Because when it is grounded in lived experience advice, then it's actually advice that is going to make a difference for those of us and the young people who are struggling. So that's my very long intro, but Ruby, a huge and very warm welcome to Well, Hello Anxiety.
Thank you so much, Jodi. That was a very generous introduction. So I'm really grateful to be here and to be speaking with you and also learning from you and your community. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's such a joy. I'm so impressed. Like, when people really walk the talk, you've got a passion, you've got lived experience yourself, you know your struggles, and I'm going to ask you about that in a moment. You also know what maybe wasn't available for you growing up, and you have just worked so hard. I know how hard it is that you've worked when I look at CEO and founder of Womn-Kind, which we'll talk about, and also your new role with the New South Wales Mental Health Commission. So the first question I wanted to ask you was, what's your mental health journey been like?
I feel like it's been a journey, of course. I feel like for a lot of people, when they talk about their mental health journey, it really isn't just a linear path from A to B. I started experiencing anxiety symptoms when I was probably about 15, and I didn't realize at the time that what I was feeling was anxiety. I was a big hypochondriac. Like, I always thought that something was wrong with my body, and it was never because I felt like I, wanted attention or anything like that. I truly felt like my body was going to fail me, and it freaked me out. And I don't really know where that came from. I mean, I'm learning more about that now and the impacts of trauma and all of those things. But I kind of would very frequently visit my local doctor in Wagga Wagga, which is where I grew up. And I would go in saying, I have this and this and this. And I remember one day she said, Ruby, and she was so lovely and so gentle and so patient through all of the rather absurd diagnosis that I put forward to her.
Yeah.
And my mum was just sitting there like, oh my gosh, not here again. But again, she was so patient with everything. And my doctor just slid a piece of paper across the desk and she said, I don't think you have this syndrome, but I think you might have this. And it was anxiety. And at the time, I thought it was the worst thing that could ever have happened to me. I did not want to be labeled in that way. I didn't know a lot about it. And my initial instinct was to just see it as a weakness. And so I think that as a teenager, I really struggled with it because I started seeing a psychologist in Wagga, but the psychologist that I saw was a lot older than me. He just didn't grow up in the way that I grew up, and I felt like there was this really big disconnect regardless of his qualifications and his expertise. I just felt like I couldn't really relate to him, and I kind of tried a bunch of different psychologists and always felt like I wasn't getting the support that I needed. And I kind of in that moment thought, okay, well, this is a me issue. Like it's too hard for people to solve. And it was never the kind of debilitating anxiety that stopped me from doing anything that I wanted to do. Like I was achieving well in school. I had a big group of friends. I was very high functioning, but the anxiety at times was very overwhelming. So I feel like that was like a rocky part, and I really turned to my family for support during that period. And a lot of the time they didn't have the answers because they hadn't struggled with anxiety either. So we're all kind of trying to navigate it for the first time. But I guess one of the best things for me was just learning that I needed to be my own advocate when it came to health. And when I was going to professionals and it wasn't feeling like it was meeting my needs, not just giving up and thinking that I was the problem, but actually persevering and learning as much as I could online from podcasts and social media and obviously the internet to know what kind of support was out there. And then I was very fortunate to connect with a psychologist probably when I was about 20 or 21, and I still see her now. So I've seen her for probably 7 years. At the time, I think I was seeing her once a week. Now I see her about every 6 weeks, and it's very much for maintenance. So I've kind of got to a point now where I know I have the tools in my toolbox to kind of be able to manage my anxiety to a degree that truly now it very rarely rears its head. And I'm very grateful that I've kind of figured out what works for me and got to a place where, I mean, even yesterday I was flying back from a conference in Canberra, and flying causes me a little bit of anxiety, and on the plane I felt a little bit anxious. And I think it's funny now because I haven't felt that intense anxiety for so long that even when I do feel small moments of anxiety, it's like, oh wow, like this used to be how I felt for 90% of the time. And so to know that my baseline is so different now is something that I'm very grateful for and also very proud of.
Oh, you should be. And it doesn't come easy. You didn't find the right psychologist until 5 years into your journey. And thank you for sharing a snapshot of what your experience, because it's strange, isn't it, kind of recounting it, but when you're living it, it's so debilitating. It's so hard. And when I hear you say how you got the diagnosis and that you were just, from what you've explained, it sounds like you're experiencing health anxiety, which I've experienced too, but I experienced it about my own kids. When our son was born, oh my gosh, I felt like I needed shares in the general practice that I visited.
Yeah, I can't imagine when I have kids. I feel like it will flare up.
Oh, and it may do, and it's good to be it's good to be aware of that. What you've spoken to is that understanding what you're experiencing and not having any stigma or shame around it, and knowing what it means and understanding yourself, finding the right person to talk to, and knowing that it's not you, it's about that relationship, it's about finding that right fit and that perseverance. And it's really beautiful to know that how lovely to not see a psychologist nearly as much as you used to. That shows what you've learned,
For
all the
sure.
coping skills that you've now got in place. And it just...
And I think it's
yeah.
just being at a different stage in life as well. A lot of the reason that I wanted to start Womankind was because I wish that we were having conversations in real time about how we were feeling. Whereas I think now and for the last few years, I've got such a fantastic group of friends that are all very open and honest with how they're feeling, whether it's feeling really happy or feeling anxious or whatever it is, that I think that having peers around you who have those really real conversations has made it a lot easier to feel like it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Oh, and tell us about Womankind, because listeners, I know all about it because I've been doing lots of reading, but you founded, and you're the founder and CEO of Womankind. Can you tell our listeners why you started it? And I understand it'll be because of what you've been through, but what does Womankind offer to young people here and now, here in Australia? And just incidentally, I wanted to just point out or ask the quick question, how far is Wagga from Melbourne?
Wagga is about halfway between Sydney and Melbourne, so it's about 5 hours from both.
Okay.
I think it's considered, regional.
Thank you. Womankind, tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Womankind was really born out of my own lived experiences, obviously, but also those of my peers. I was on a weekend away with a bunch of my girlfriends when we were probably 19, and it just so happened that that weekend we all started to open up about the things that we were navigating during our high school years. And what all of us really wished was that we had been there for each other during those moments. And, the scope of the struggles that some of my peers went through and the things that they navigated very much on their own, and often with a lot of shame, really highlighted the fact that this was such a big issue because, when we were having those conversations, the most commonly said words were "me too." I think the irony in our generation is that we've become very isolated from each other by the feelings and emotions and experiences that we actually have in common. And so I wanted to start an organization that felt more like the advice you might get from a big sister. It's not the kind of clinical approach with the kind of imagery you might expect to find from those more traditional, mental health interventions. It's very much empowering, it's strengths-based, and it really focuses on prevention and early intervention. So we support young people in a few different ways, and all of our support is delivered by qualified mentors who are young people themselves and have some form of lived experience. And as an organisation, we're advised by a network of allied health professionals. So we're kind of bringing together the best information in a way that's really easy for young people to digest and understand. And we deliver that support through going into schools and communities and organisations and delivering face-to-face wellbeing workshops. And they really focus on wellbeing, leadership and belonging. So we're really trying to make sure that every young person has everything they need to become the best version of themselves, both now and in the future. And we also have an app, which is called the Womn-Kind app. And it's a first of its kind social wellness app here in Australia. And we designed it in consultation with over 400 young people across Australia to make sure that it's really what they need and want when it comes to support and just to meet them where they're at. I think a lot of the times we criticize technology for creating disconnection, but for a lot of young people who live outside the city, it's actually really hard for them to find the supports and the kind of meaningful social connections from the places that they call home. So the Womn-Kind app was really to make sure that the young people who live outside of metropolitan cities have the same access to quality support as their metropolitan peers. And then we also host events. We have a podcast, which is on a bit of a break at the moment. We have merchandise that supports a lot of our initiatives. We have partnerships. We do a bunch of different things, but those core kind of offerings are going in and delivering that face-to-face support and also connecting online via social media and the Womn-Kind app.
Oh, I'm so delighted that you invested the time and the money into creating the app, because when I think about as a parent of teens and a daughter of 15, and I know there are lots of parents and lots of educators and health professionals that are listening as well. Is this an app that we can pay for access to for a young person that we care about? And what would that app offer a teenage girl who downloads it, has it on her phone, and how would she use it, and what sort of supports would that offer her?
Yeah, absolutely. We always say that the Womankind app is the best investment you can make in a young person that you love or care about. So the app is free to download. We really wanted to make sure that it was as accessible for as many people as possible. And there are a lot of features that people can access for free. But there is also a paid subscription, which works out at 27 cents a day. So it's a very small investment into the lives of the people you love. And basically, what young people can do on that app is they can read through hundreds of blog style content posts that range from anything from kind of like the brain foods to eat before an exam to how to navigate your first breakup to literally everything that you might wonder as a teenager or want to ask a big sister. Maybe you feel too nervous to ask someone in your family or a friend or a teacher. You can read about it on the Womankind app, but you can also ask questions. And so you can ask them as yourself, but you can also ask them anonymously. And the beauty of that feature is that not only our mentors respond to those questions and comments, but so do other young people. So we're really encouraging that peer-to-peer model of support to make sure that, you know, people can feel like they're not alone. The number of times that someone's written on there, you know, I'm doing my ELS test tomorrow and I failed the first 2 times and I'm feeling so anxious about it, and the lady's so nasty at, you know, at the place where you have to get it done, and my mum says that I have to get my P's and on all these things. And the number of young people who are responding to that and making the person feel like seen and heard and not alone is really special. So they can do that. They can also access more information about if they find themselves in a crisis situation or they're needing more tailored support. We refer to other organizations, and we also do partner with organizations like the Butterfly Foundation or Minus 18 Youth to make sure that young people who might be part of minority groups or struggling with something really specific can get the support that they need.
Honestly, what a gift. And I actually am on an advisory team for a startup, so I know what it takes behind the scenes to get something like this up and running and working and getting people contributing, reading, commenting, answering questions. So kudos to you and your team, because there's so many ways. You know, I'm not sure what gen you are. I'm a Gen Xer. With younger people now, they're wanting to access their health information through TikTok, through Instagram, through YouTube, and through their social media channels. So what a gift to have somewhere trusted and somewhere to send their friends as well, because I know that the weight of worrying about somebody's mental health it's a very, very heavy burden. And, you know, it's so worrying that, you know, here in 2025, mental health statistics are getting worse, not better. And I wonder if you could speak to the person listening and help them to understand what are some of the things that we can do in our homes that might make a difference. And also I wanted to clarify, Womn-Kind is it solely for young women?
It's for, at the moment, women and gender diverse young people,
Yes.
but we are hoping to launch the brother organisation at some point, which would mean that all genders have the kind of support that we offer. So that's the goal.
That's the goal, yes. Yeah, all in good time. You're so young. You've achieved so much. So that's just, yeah, that's on the vision board if you have one.
It absolutely
yes, yes. What are some of the things that are, that, you know, in your experience and in your expertise, contributing to decline in mental health of young people? And secondly, what are some of the things maybe families can do that can make a really measurable difference for the young people in their homes?
I feel like there's a lot at play, and we host regular consultations with young people and do a lot of research with them to understand, I guess, the challenges that they're facing, because obviously while I still feel like I'm in touch with them and the younger people who follow in my footsteps, it is always evolving. But I think that some of the things that are coming up very frequently is like this fear for the future, like especially when it comes to climate anxiety and all of the things that, you know, we see on the news. I think that young people see themselves kind of at the start of the race when it comes to life, the start of the journey, and to see such bad news stories all the time can kind of create this sense of lack of hope for the future. So I think that that's something that they're really trying to grapple with and understand, like their place in the world and how, like, what kind of world they're going to inherit as, I guess, the adults of the world. And I think as well, just that social pressure, which I think a lot of it does come back to social media and when they're seeing other people online and feeling like they need to compare themselves to the images that they see and someone else's highlight reel. I do think that social media is at play. And also, a lot of young people are just putting a whole lot of pressure on themselves. They want to perform well at school. They are really passionate, but sometimes they don't really know how to translate that into action. And I think a lot of the time, young people are painted as this kind of, they can be lazy or they can be causing problems and they can be, all of these things, when actually young people have so many ideas and they have such a vision for the world that they want to be in. And I think that some of the rise in, mental ill health probably is contributed to the fact that for a long time, young people weren't engaged or included in the conversations that impacted their lives. And I think that, as a sector, we're doing a lot more in co-designing services with young people and making sure they feel seen in the services that are there to support them. But I think that that's something that we need to really be focusing on, making sure that young people have a seat at the table so that services can genuinely meet their needs. But I think when it comes to the home environment, we can't underestimate the value in getting back to basics. And by that, I mean making sure that young people have at least 8 hours of sleep, making sure they're drinking 2 liters of water, making sure they're exercising in ways that they enjoy, that they're nourishing their body with, foods that sustain them. I think so often we kind of overlook those really core fundamental things as very big contributors to our mental health. And even throughout my mental health journey, one of the biggest times of improvement for me was when I realized that I had a hormone imbalance. So I was doing regular blood tests and I understood that what was going on inside my body was actually contributing to a lot of how I was feeling mentally. So I think for a lot of young people, it's making sure that they, are going to see a doctor if they're not feeling 100% to see whether they could be low in B12 or vitamin D or whatever it might be, those basic things. But I think as well in family and home situations, just making sure that there's always a space for young people to talk about how they're feeling. And young people really do model the kind of behavior that they see. So I think that in family units, we need to be having open conversations and talking about our own mental health. And it doesn't just have to be when things are hard and tricky, like talking about, around dinner, at the dinner table, the things that you felt grateful for that day, or if you're struggling with something, being open and frank about that so that when the young person is feeling challenged by something, it's not such a big thing to come forward and say, I'm struggling with this. I think that that's something that I'm very grateful that in my family there was such open communication that it never got to a point where it was a disaster before you started talking about it. It was kind of that constant feedback loop, which I think we can all be doing better.
Most parents worry whether they're getting it right. Add in developmental concerns, disability or neurodivergence, plus information overload, opinions, appointments, assessments, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed and adrift in uncharted waters. Envisage Family's free support program, led by professionals and parents who've been there, will help you navigate the journey with confidence. No diagnosis and no NDIS needed. Find out more today at envisage.community. You are so wise, and I couldn't agree more. I think sometimes we can look for the little 1%ers that might make a difference, but it's those big foundational pillars. And sleep was the first thing you mentioned, and what we know from the research when it comes to anxiety is that when we don't get the sleep we want, we're just more reactive. We don't have the bandwidth that we have when we get that good quality sleep. And it is, for some people listening, you might be thinking, gosh, well, the horse is kind of bolted. I've got, because boundaries are hard to impose the older kids get, aren't they, when it comes to things like phone use and nutrition and exercise, those lifestyle habits. But, but you can model them absolutely, and what they see us role modelling has a greater effect, as you mentioned, on them and their choices than what we say. But when we've got younger children, putting some boundaries in earlier can make such a powerful difference. One of the boundaries I have in is our daughter. Her friends think I'm a monster, Ruby, because no, they don't really. We all get along great, but she gets 3 hours on her phone a day. That's the limit that I've set, and she can use that from her phone. Can't be in her room. She has it over. Both the kids have them charging in the family room overnight, and I think, gosh, 3 hours of phone activity a day is a lot, but compared to her peers, who many have unlimited, most, I think, in fact, perhaps all, have completely unlimited access to their phones. And different families make different decisions, but she's very understanding, because all these years have been talking about mental health and about well-being and about comparison and about focus and attention, being outside, doing things that are more active. So she, even though she doesn't like it, she is not happy about it. She accepts it. And that's because we started early. But if they've had a free rein and then all of a sudden you start to kind of shut things down, that can be problematic. But we do what we can with what we have influence over when we have influence over it. And, we start with what we've got where we are. And I think that those pillars, those foundations are really important. One of the other things I've heard you talk about is looking at some of the traits that particularly anxious young people might have, like, say, being really empathetic, maybe being more sensitive than other people, or possibly even being particularly creative, and looking at some of what might be seen in air quotes as weaknesses that accompany anxiety, but looking at them and completely flipping it, looking at them as strengths. Can you speak to that? Because I love this approach.
I think that that's just been something that I've realized in my own journey. I, as a teenager, always saw myself as like oversensitive and feeling things too much. And people would sometimes say to me, like, you're so emotional, as if it was a bad thing. But I think that when I think about my personal relationships, my friendships, and also in a professional sense and my career, I wouldn't be at the place that I'm at if I wasn't that empathetic person, because I realize now that it's a strength. It's not always that leadership is the loudest person in the room. Sometimes it is the person who is listening to others and then making sure that those voices are heard in the conversation. So a lot of the work that we do at Womn-Kind is trying to change that narrative around seeing your attributes, seeing your quirks, seeing your characteristics not as weaknesses, and not seeing themselves as anxiety, like not being defined by that thing, and trying to unpack it to say, okay, maybe you do consider yourself an overthinker, but by being someone who has those more like overthinking tendencies, maybe you're really reliable because you check every box twice, or maybe you know what I mean? Like there's so much strength and wisdom in the things that we do consider as weakness. I guess it's just about managing them in a way that means that doesn't feel overwhelming.
And like you say, having those attributes and knowing that an empathetic person might more naturally move into perhaps a healthcare role or a profession where those strengths shine and impact others' lives in ways that people who don't have those traits couldn't, because they just don't have that capacity to kind of put themselves in the shoes of the person that they're supporting. And the sensitivity and the, and it can feel like I know I'm a sensitive person, and I think I was saying this on the podcast the other day. So if you've listened to the other episode, or maybe it was on somebody else's podcast, but my husband and I were having a muck around about some things, and he was throwing a few barbs my way, just joking around. And I said, "You can't get me. I'm Teflon. I'm Teflon." He goes, "You're not Teflon," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm Velcro. Everything sticks." I'm Velcro.
I know.
But it's hard, isn't it? Because you do get we do overthink things, and we are sort of heavily impacted by the external environment and the way other people are around us. But I think, I mean, I'm 51. I'm much older than you, but I've learned that through experience, whenever my mind is going to, oh, I think this is happening because I've done that, I am shown time and time and time again that what I predict will happen, or what I predict is happening, or I predict another person is thinking like I've got some crystal ball, is never, if rarely, the case. And the research, there's some really interesting research, Ruby, that showed that of all the things we worry about, they took a huge group of people and looked at what they worried about, and then they tracked to see if those worries eventuated, if those sort of worries came true, so to speak. And I think it was, I haven't got it obviously with me, but from memory, it was about 9 out of 10 worries did not come true. And then there was
so reassuring.
Yeah, it's so reassuring, isn't it? And then of the ones that, and then there was a small portion of things that worked out. It's not that the worry, the bad event didn't happen. It was something really good happened. So it sort of almost brought it up to 95% of what we worry about is either going to not eventuate or work out much better than we predict. And easy to look at that and go, well, that is very comforting. But also when you're in the thick of a really deep worry and your stomach's churning and your whole body is responding as if that terrible event you're worrying about is happening in that moment, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough.
It is tough. It is tough. I remember my mum said to me, 99% of the things you worry about don't actually happen. And she obviously just plucked that out of nowhere. But when she said it, I was like, it seems right. And it does make you think, especially for the worriers and the overthinkers, like most of the things you freak out about don't actually happen. And I know I'm always the one to think like, oh, but what if this happens, as if it's a bad thing. And even in my business, I'm always, not always, I at the start would think of like, what's the worst case scenario? But now I really try and flip it, even when I am in that like anxious, uncomfortable place, to be like, what's the best that could happen? Like you can overthink in both ways. So now I'm like, okay, what if it doesn't work? Yeah, but what if it does work? Or what if it is a disaster? Yeah, but what if it's better than you could have ever imagined? Like trying to catch yourself, which is a lot easier said than done. But I do think that there is something for trying to just completely flip it on its head and think about the best case scenario.
It is. And it takes practice, doesn't it? And you might even need a little reminder around you to help you to reframe something. I have a handwritten note in my office at home that says, we get better with practice and everything is practice. Because with anxiety,
I love that.
It's good, isn't it? I loved it so much. I literally wrote it in text on a piece of paper and put it on my wall with sticky tape. Because I know with anxiety sometimes, and certainly worth mentioning that anxiety affects us in so many different ways. And my experience of anxiety will be different to Ruby's and to yours if you're listening, or to the people that you care about in nuanced ways and in big ways, depending on the diagnosis. But often those anxious feelings are so uncomfortable that when they arise just at the idea of starting something new or sharing something online or suggesting an idea to someone, that the more we can just realise that, well, it's just a good reminder that, okay, we get better with practice. Everything is practice. I don't have to get it 100% the first time. It takes away that perfectionism. It helps to overcome that procrastination. And one of the other things that I do sometimes is I think, what is the worst that could happen? And how would I be if that happened? And I know that I've developed the skills to be able to ask myself that question. I'm medicated for my anxiety. And I know that doesn't eliminate it at all, but it's given me the space and the opportunity to develop the skills that I need to manage and to be able to step back a little bit and not get so swept away in the anxiety, but step back and kind of have a bit of a look at what's happening and think about it from a bit more of a measured point of view. And I wondered, what was it about all of your therapy? I know there'd be many things and it's probably hard to pin it down, but what was one or two of the really powerful skills that you developed or perspectives you developed through your years of spending time with a psychologist?
I feel like there is honestly so many things. And with my psychologist, I don't even necessarily talk about skills or tools. For me, it's just a lot of kind of that talk therapy, unpacking things. But one of the biggest and most important things I've learned in therapy is to trust myself, to trust my gut, to trust my intuition, and to just trust that I do have control over my mind and body. And I think that has been a journey for sure. But I feel like now I'm having conversations with my wonderful psychologist, Corinne, and she'll say, wait, I just want you to take a moment to reflect on the fact that 2 years ago or even a year ago, you would not have said that in that way, or you would not have felt as sure about it. Like, I remember at the start, I was always going to her for answers. Like, I would come to her with some issue that I was navigating and I'd be like, so what do I do? Or like, what does this mean? Or whereas now I'm a lot better at trusting myself. And I think that I've reclaimed a lot of power by, I think as well, going through life. Like, I do think that, when you're going through your first heartbreak or maybe you're anticipating it, it does feel so overwhelming. But now I feel like a couple of relationships, into my life, even being in a relationship, I'm like, the worst that could happen is that the relationship ends. Maybe that's the worst that could happen. And if that happened, I would still be okay because I have myself. Like, I think that like self-reliance has been a big thing. And I also think my psychologist always gives me books to read, which is something that I have asked of her because I'm a big learner and love to understand things better. And so for me, learning about trauma and our early childhood experiences has made me feel so much more secure in myself, in my characteristics and my tendencies, because I think that it paints more of a picture. And I just finished reading a book, which I think everyone should read. It's called What Happened to You. I don't know if you've read it, by Dr. I think his name's Bruce Perry, but I will check, and Oprah Winfrey. And it is just the most amazing book at understanding the way bodies process and minds process even the smallest things. And yeah, it's all about healing and resilience. And I think that's been one of the most healing books for me to read. Also, I love Brene Brown books. I feel like all of those books, especially The Gifts of Imperfection, I loved that book. I think it's just been a lot of little moments and less of like tools that I've learned. But one tool that I always share with young people is left nostril breathing, because when you breathe through your left nostril, you trigger the parasympathetic nervous system or the calming side of the brain. And for whatever reason, young people love it and they always tell me that they do it. So it seems to work. So if you've got a young person in your life and you're trying to think of things to suggest, you could try that one.
Oh, thank you. And so that would be just covering your right nostril and just holding it down and breathing solely through the left nostril. I love that you've shared a practical idea. And getting back to what you were saying about the talking, it's so healing, isn't it? Having a safe place to talk and to share. And it's a really great way to kind of process with somebody who's listening, properly listening, and not there to problem solve. And I think that's something that we can all take something away from, is that, as most listeners aren't psychologists, and if you've got family or students or friends that you're looking after, I think just that the power of being a good listener and really validating somebody as well. And it can be hard because somebody might experience something or be worried about something that you can't relate to. And you might just be thinking in your head, oh my gosh, like this is blown out of all proportion, or I just don't get this. And really, it doesn't really matter if you don't get it. What we all need, every single one of us, when we're worried about something or something's bothering us, is to be able to talk about it without feeling rushed, and to have someone just to listen, and also to say that sounds like that's really hard. even if you don't agree with it,
Yeah.
set our judgments aside. Sometimes as parents, we can see that our kids are having a problem with something that doesn't seem like a big idea, but it's big to the person who's struggling with it. I think that's a
Yeah.
good thing to remember.
Yeah, and I think as well, just asking whoever it is that you are supporting or listening to, what, like asking them, what do you need right now? Like, do you need advice? Do you need listening? Do you need a hug? Like, actually just asking them, because so many times I feel like we think it's really complicated and we have to say all the right things, but some people just want to be able to vent for 10 minutes, but some people do want that more practical advice. And some people, I think for me, it's helped so much being able to support the people that I love to be able to just ask them, like, how can I be the best possible support to you during this?
I'm really pleased that you've raised that, because we don't have to be mind readers. And sometimes if you are supporting someone, you might feel a bit ill-equipped. I don't know how to help this person. You can ask them. It's okay to say, what do you need? How can I be of the most help? And sometimes it's just, I just needed someone to listen. I've had that conversation with Pete quite a few times. We've been together a long time, Ruby. We met when we were 19 and we're 51. So long
Cute.
time, but it's very cute, isn't it? But he was always a problem solver. And over time, through all of my therapy and learning what I need and what helps, I've learned to ask for what I need in that relationship, and he knows. And then sometimes it's quite funny because I'll be sharing something and then I'll be like, are you listening? He's like, I'm listening, I'm not talking. I'm like, well, you have to acknowledge that you've heard me.
Yeah.
So he's like, I can't win, but
Yeah.
oh, Ruby, it's been so delightful talking with you. And oh gosh, I'm so thankful that we've had a chance to talk about the work that you're doing with Womn-Kind. And congratulations again on your appointment as a Deputy Commissioner with the New South Wales Mental Health Commission. It's brilliant to hear people like you who actually have, had the mental health journey, struggled with it, found what helps, what doesn't, and are in connection with a whole lot of young people. Hundreds and hundreds of other voices come through you to ultimately make a difference to others who are going to be needing services and access and care in the future. So can you tell us more about, for listeners, how they can connect with you, learn more about your work and the Womn-Kind website? Anything else that you'd like to share, please?
Absolutely. Probably the best way to connect with us is via our Instagram page, which is just WOMNKIND. So woman has no A or E in it. That's a deliberate choice to make sure that it's gender inclusive for anyone who identifies as a woman or who is gender diverse. So the Womn-Kind Instagram, also the Womn-Kind website is a great place to find us. So it's just www.womn-kind.com.au. And we have our merchandise on there, which you can buy, which supports our initiatives. And if you, want us to come to your school or your organization or your community group and deliver a workshop, I'd love to hear from you. So please reach out via the website because I would love to stay in touch.
Oh, Ruby, thank you so much. And we'll put all of those details in the show notes. So, Ruby, thank you again. One last very quick question, completely without notice, but what's something that you are doing in your life to really elevate your mental health, your well-being, or even just to have a little bit of fun these days?
I love that you said fun. I feel like something that I wanted to add to one of our previous responses was just joy and fun. Like, I feel like sometimes life can seem so serious, and actually, we need to be being a lot more intentional with bringing joy and fun into our lives. I have been getting into ice baths recently, and I'm really
Yes.
loving that. I feel like that is such a treat for me. Also, acupuncture is something that I do to take care of myself.
Yes.
But just spending time with friends, I love going for walks with them. My family still live on a farm in regional New South Wales, so any opportunity I can get to get out of the city and be back in that fresh air and be in nature is one of the biggest ways that I look after myself. But there's so many things. I feel like whatever I need that day, I kind of try and fit it in any way. But yeah, the cold bath, the ice baths and the acupuncture, if you haven't tried them, I feel like they're fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad I asked. Thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Jodi. I'm so grateful. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for sharing this time with me on Well, Hello Anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.